Today, Open Source Security is talking to Patrick Garrity, a security researcher at VulnCheck, a person I love talking to. Patrick's a good friend, so this is a ton of fun. And you just put out a report titled VulnCheck State of Exploitation 1H 2026, which is a very catchy title. I will commend you on. But all right, Patrick, tell us who you are and tell us why you're here, and we'll go from there. Because this report, I have not been this excited about a vulnerability report in a long time, because I'm going to ruin it for everyone. It's all bullshit, folks. That's the title.
Yeah. So thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure, always hanging out with you. And yeah, I think the major thing is we've seen, this first half exploitation. I do these every 6 months, right?
Yeah.
And I've been doing them for probably 2.5 years since I joined VulnCheck, maybe 2 years. And I just look at exploited vulnerabilities and try and understand trends and see what products are getting hit and, see what the timeline to exploitation is. So I have a pretty good sense of consistency. There's always imperfections in vuln data, but generally speaking, it's the same methodology. Let's look at some different sets of data in different areas. And I do an annual and then I do a half-year report. And the really interesting thing for this half-year report is the amount of just insanity related to CVE and vulnerability disclosure volume. And then the other side is this narrative that AI is going to end the world tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think quite as the vulnpocalypse. And so I'm hey, I have some questions. I want to take a pragmatic view to this and try and understand if the data is really starting to speak to the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that these frontier models are promoting. And that's more or less, the questions I think I put at the top are that I was looking for are, that I was curious about are more vulnerabilities being discovered and disclosed, resulting in more vulnerabilities being exploited? Is the rate at which vulnerabilities are being exploited faster? Or, because there's this narrative that AI models are accelerating exploitation faster, quicker.
Yep.
Are vulnerabilities being discovered with AI tools more dangerous, or are we all feeding into the AI assisted vulnerability discovery hype cycle? And I did some research the whole time, that this narrative has been played out. And so, it's just been a lot of fun to kind of be on the sidelines and collecting intel and doing vuln disclosure and just watching the ecosystem just I don't know, freak out. It's you gotta be a little bit cynical, but somewhat entertaining, but then also there's a reality that defenders really have to, understand what's going on. So that's more or less, these are real challenges people ask me all the time. And I'm let's go into the data and see what it tells us.
Yes.
So.
Which I love. And I absolutely adore anytime we can tell a story with data. That's my favorite thing in the world. So I want to start with one question, because you talk about KEV, which stands for known exploited vulnerabilities. And we usually think of KEV, there's something called the CISA-KEV, which I think is what a lot of people think of. And your list of known exploited vulnerabilities is not the CISA list of known exploited vulnerabilities. So why don't you kind of explain the difference to that for us? Because I think that's important for the rest of the discussion.
Yeah. So it's inclusive of CISA-KEV. So everything on CISA-KEV. We have a free product called VulnCheck KEV. We give it away, and we essentially collect and curate anywhere that's public information, where there's known exploited vulnerability, evidence of exploitation of a vuln. That could be anything from a honeypot being hit via shadow server or CrowdSec or KevIntel. We also have a network of real vulnerable hosts called VulnCheck Canaries, and we put indicators that those have been exploited. And then you have a lot of disclosures via advisories. So, organizations like Microsoft or Google or Apple. I actually have a chart on the bottom. I'm trying to PatchStack in the WordPress ecosystem and WordFence are commonly disclosing exploitation, which is pretty common. BitSite, Cisco, a bunch of Intel organizations. Exploitation often comes from just a broad set of sources. And so the objective and goal of our team with Kev is to like curate, here's all the things where people have talked about them being exploited. Doesn't mean they're all equal. Like some of the technology might be like a nation state and get hits once, and some of it might be like broad spread spraying from botnet that has compromised, thousands or hundreds of thousands of hosts. So it can vary, but that allows us to look at like, hey, this is what is known. Like it's imperfect, but it's a pretty good sense of these are things that are bad and you probably should fix them if they're in your environment.
Right. And your list is larger than the CISA list.
Yeah, it just passed 5,000 kevs. So it's about, I don't know, 2 or 3 times is large in size as far as the number of known exploited vulnerabilities. CISA tends to be like very, very focused on broad enterprise technologies.
Yeah,
so like you'll find other technologies like end-of-life devices a lot of times that we're seeing exploitation, or Chinese manufactured devices that maybe might not be in the US ecosystem, or they might be and
they
people
totally
just don't realize it. Embedded products are real. So there's, also like they don't track WordPress plugins really, unless it's like extremely broadly deployed. So there's just a lot of difference from an evidence perspective of there's more signal out there. And then a lot of times we have it much earlier, cause our criteria is, we see it added. Sometimes too, researchers, they're like, hey, we see this, and they put it on X or they put it on LinkedIn, and it's like, hey, yeah, that's a reputable person. Like, let's trust they're within reason. Like, we're only talking about like 2% of all vulnerabilities. So
yes,
5,000 is relatively a small set of things, worth prioritizing, fixing, and if they're in your environment. So that's what VulnCheck Kev is.
So I want to talk about that. You just mentioned 5% of vulnerabilities. I'm trying to find the graph here.
Oh, like 5,000. So like 2%.
Okay,
less than 2%.
Right. But so this is the story, I think, from my perspective, is if you look at the number of CVEs being published right now, it's like completely out of control. And there's almost this cult that has developed around like obsessing over the number of vulnerabilities being published. Yeah. And it is a lot. I'm not going to say it isn't. But when we look at your data of the graph of the number of exploited vulnerabilities, which theoretically are the ones we should care about, and the rest, I won't say we shouldn't, but we probably won't because we don't have the time. But like that number is actually decreasing, it looks like, over time.
Well, the total number is it was up 10% over like the half year, compared to last half year, and it's up mildly, but like CVEs are up 45% this year, I think, on the first half of the year. Exploitation's up like 5 to 10%. Right. And so like, not, that means that ratio is dropping. Now, at the same time, like those aren't a cohort analysis, so it's not 1-to-1 necessarily of like these ones that got published also are being exploited. So it'll be interesting to see like how it draws out over time. But generally speaking, even when I do cohort analysis, like the cohort analysis is showing that like the same line of things are being exploited, generally count-wise over time. There's definitely been increases over the year, probably more related to visibility. And then I think like, attackers shifted in 2021 from credential compromise to more exploitation, likely because multi-factor authentication hardened the ability to do credential compromise. That's generally it's showing like exploitation is persistent. And I think there's also a question of like, is it that the threat actors just have so much, like there's only a finite number of people that are doing bad. Like maybe it's growing. AI makes it more accessible, like, which is true. But generally, they know the things they want to target and they exploit them over and over again. If you look at the products that continue to get hit, definitely if a product is broadly used, like it's going to be likely to be targeted, more frequently.
Right. Right.
And then you could also talk about like, is the code base that good if it's continuing just constantly to get popped as well. So there's a lot to unpack there, but yeah, I think you're right. It's like, do all these vulnerabilities matter? Are all these vulnerabilities in the enterprise ecosystem? Like those are great questions. And I think, if you look at it, it's like, yeah, just the WordPress ecosystem's kicking off like, gosh, this year maybe like 5 to 10,000 CVEs alone.
Yes.
So if you just stay away from WordPress plugins, like we're not even talking about WordPress core, which is generally pretty hardened, although recently
Except,
we have a new
last week.
Yeah, that is, but also content management systems like WordPress and Joomla and I think Oracle, maybe WebLogic might be in that category, maybe not. They tend to be targeted because they're on the internet and they're everywhere.
Yeah, right.
So like generally those are just technologies that like you want to patch, and you want to patch fast and religiously, and also have mitigating controls like a WAF in front of them. Web application firewall. And so, I think the volumes, like you want to compartmentalize it down into like, what are the actual technologies being targeted is a thing I like to do, from a CAV perspective. So then I can understand like where I spend my effort in automating, building mitigating controls. Like I don't think things have substantially changed as far as what controls you should be putting in place. I think the speed in which you might be remediating should probably be faster. I think that's always been the case, though.
So, am I remembering incorrectly though? The time to exploit hasn't like significantly dropped since last year. In fact, didn't it go up a little bit since 2025?
Well, kind of twofold, right? So in the first half, like overall, it seems like there's less vulnerabilities being exploited at the time of disclosure or the same day of disclosure or before. So that tells me a little bit, and really, like, it's not that far off. I think it was 29% last year. Now it's at 23% of all KEVs.
Right.
And it kind of shifts. So like it's in a 23 to 30% range usually. So that's consistent. But the thing that changed was the median time, like the middle of the road of all the vulnerabilities, like that was 120 days last year. The first half of this year, it's at 80 days.
Okay.
So it does tell me that like people either are moving faster or we have earlier detection, right? And
right.
my gut is like they're probably moving faster, but also like maybe there's better detection capabilities that this stuff is surfacing quicker, faster on the exploitation side as well. There's always different dynamics that you could consider looking at.
It's the old correlation isn't causation, right? I mean, that's always the challenge with this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you can spend so much time going down each of these rabbit holes of like, well, is it detection is better? Is it threat actors are moving faster? I think the narrative of like, oh, AI is all of a sudden, that's probably the big part we're going to talk about is like, is AI suddenly shifting everything to like urgent, immediate, the world is ending? And so that's a big part I looked at was twofold, like, okay, of the AI discovered vulnerabilities, like, I think that's an interesting data set of like all these frontier models and different projects discovering vulns, and disclosing them. Well, some of them disclosing them. Like, are those being exploited and what products are they in? And then I think the other side of that is like, actual AI products being exploited. And I think we're seeing a lot more news about some of these products, that are getting targeted, and hit, by attackers. And, kind of, we could go down each of those paths, but like, I think actually the risk of AI weaponization of vulnerabilities, like an AI model finding, discovering, and doing exploitation, like to me, I'm not, the data's not really showing,
Yeah.
that there's a significant change and that's causing disruption. On the other hand, there is a significant change in the number of known exploited vulnerabilities in AI products. And so what
Yes.
that means is like, yeah, we just expanded our attack surface. Like the products that you're implementing within your environment that are related to AI, number one, they're new products. A lot of them are not hardened. They have a lot of
None
vulnerabilities
of them are
and
hardened, Patrick. None of them. Literally none.
yeah, they're all mod coded. But yeah, to me that like that's the bigger exposure from an enterprise perspective
Yeah. Yeah.
is that the AI products themselves.
So
That
I'm trying to look. I don't see anything in here that filters some of this up. When we're talking about AI products, you mean it's everything from like OpenClaw agents to people running like Claude code on their desktop, right? That's the kind of things we're talking about.
yeah. So a lot of the connectors, I kind of listed this out and yeah, like you know, a lot of things that you would connect with Claude Code or OpenAI, a combination of like AI gateways, AI agents, AI workflow automation, workload scaling, model building. And a lot of these tend to be open source products, right? So, some of the products, as example, Lengthflow, Light LLM, OpenClaw, N8, N8N. I probably said that wrong. Olama, Gradio, Comfy, Flowwise. Flowwise is getting hit. There's a ton of new calves this month that aren't even in this report for
Oh,
Flowwise, I
interesting.
think. Yeah. So, um, the thing that we're observing, because we have canaries with a lot of these technologies, we see both first stage and second stage, and what we're seeing is they're doing credential harvesting, and then they're also running crypto mining. So,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is the same thing like attackers have always been doing,
Yes.
mass compromise wise. But the credential side gets really interesting because now, okay, am I leveraging that to use the model? Am I using that to harvest data from your instance? A lot of these tools also are interconnected with your core infrastructure because people are running 100 miles an hour at implementing AI.
Yes.
And so keys to the kingdom, like full privileged access to anything that you want, type of scenarios. And so, yeah, from my perspective, it's like, yeah, that this seems like the bigger risk here, more so than like the frontier models and Glasswing Mythos GPT 8.1097. I'm saying I'm not.
I know I can't
I
keep track
can't.
either.
I can't keep track. But
Okay,
yeah,
I
I
want to
mean
I want to ask
that's
about that though. You have a
yeah.
graph in here. I keep scrolling up and down in this. I should have gotten a better scrolling device prior to this discussion. But you
You
have a
need one of
graph
these
that.
like Apple Pad things.
Oh, there you go. I should get one. That would
Yeah,
no, not right now.
very
All right.
nice.
You have a graph that shows the number of disclosed vulnerabilities from Glasswing versus the number of things that should have been disclosed due to the
Yeah,
90-day disclosure period.
yeah,
And it's a pathetic graph, right? Like the number of things that
yeah.
should have been disclosed is what, 1,000, more than 1,000, 1,500 or something. And the number of things that have been disclosed is what is the number? Like 27? I think I
Yeah.
see.
Well, there's more that have been disclosed that I've been able to find. They just don't update their ledger. And so I think like pulling a little bit back here, like, I think most people know what Glasswing Mythos is. Like, oh, hey, we have this new frontier model. It's too dangerous for the world. We can't give it to anybody. Oh, government, you should ban models like this. Oh, wow, we got banned. What? Okay.
Right.
But, they came out and they were like, we're discovering thousands of vulnerabilities. And in the 400 page of reports and their cards and their models and all this, like, I honestly think like these people are like the people that are involved in this, like they're very smart, but also I think there's a lot of manipulation going on in relation to
Yes.
like, let's publish so much volume of data that no one can consume it that you're literally just going to be like, whoa, this is world ending, right? The whole report out of like 250 pages and all the information with Glasswing had a single vulnerability disclosed. That same exact vulnerability was actually discovered by Isle, another AI project, pretty cool team.
Yeah.
That found the vulnerability and reported it and also provided the patch for it well before Glasswing reported. So for me, I'm like, something is off here. Like something is off. Like if you're going to come out swinging and say, hey, we discovered thousands of vulnerabilities, provide evidence with it. Like
Yes.
provide evidence that's substantial. And so for me, they're like, oh, we're going to issue this ledger and you're going to be able to track every vulnerability. It's going to have hashes. I mean, all the technical details are there on how this is going to be done. And then they launched the ledger like in May. And at this point, I'm tracking to see, manually, like to track for myself. Cause I'm like, dude, I don't trust these. I don't trust this. Like,
Yeah.
I read so many vulnerability reports and I've seen so many things and I'm like, something is off in relation to the approach that Anthropic is taking to this. Like transparency, disclosures, like so many things are missing. But they caught everyone's attention and freaked them out.
Oh yeah.
And so I ended up collecting manually off CVE records, advisories, a bunch of different places, like where Anthropic was attributed to. And I'm not just disputing that the Claude and OpenAI and these models can discover vulnerabilities. Like we all know that's true. We're using and leveraging the models, like with the right knowledge and understanding, you can get it to do wild things and find things and things that you can exploit.
Yeah.
And I think that's really seen in the CVE volume that we're seeing is like vulnerability discovery generally has become accessible to the masses like it has never been before with AI models. And so naturally it's like, okay, like cool. I think we understand that. But the piece with Anthropic is then they're like, oh, we have this ledger. They release a ledger. And at this point, I have like 85 vulnerabilities that I've been able to attribute to them based on like tags and CVE records and advisories and credits and all that stuff. And the ledger had 27 vulnerabilities that were disclosed. And they're like, oh, we have a 90-day window. Like our VDP is that in 90 days we'll disclose, or we'll disclose once a patch is available. But so I'm like, okay, so like I already have 88 things that are disclosed and your ledger only has 27. And there were a few on the ledger that I didn't have yet. So I popped those over, right? Now I have like 100. I don't know. And I'm like, there's more. They're not maintaining this ledger. I'm going to build a tracker so I can track all this stuff so that it will notify me when it updates. I mean, a month goes by and a single update on the ledger doesn't happen. Like, and so I'm like, well, this is interesting because like their 90-day disclosure policy, all these vulnerabilities, I think at this point it's like 200 or 300 vulnerabilities have passed the 90-day window. There hasn't been a single update. So like they just abandoned the whole project.
I bet they did.
Didn't abandon. Like my opinion is, and I think there's a combination of things going on here where like, yeah, and when they came out of the ledger, they're like, we found 23,000 vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Or they call them findings. And then they're like, we validated like 500 of them and reported them, but they had to hire 4 or 5 different companies to do validation before reporting these vulnerabilities. So, part of me is like, oh, did they just pick the ones that like were obviously real vulnerabilities of this 23,000 data set and then ran all the manual work to validate them and get other people to report them for them? But to me, what that shows is like the bottleneck in vulnerability discovery. There's a huge bottleneck in relation to vulnerability coordination that I don't think any of these people that are running these projects understand or know. And like, it's like they're like surprised, like, oh man, I report vulnerabilities and nobody at the project, an open source project, listens to me. Like they actually need, and they even signaled at one point, I think it was on a podcast or something that like, dude, some projects have asked us to stop reporting vulnerabilities because they're overwhelmed because they can't manage the intake.
Yeah, there's some of that for sure.
Yeah. And so I think like a combination of things going on here, and like that ledger, we're past 2 months from when it was released. It has just been completely abandoned.
Yeah. So I have a
From day
theory, Patrick.
one.
I have a theory,
Yeah.
and I will tell
Yeah.
you my
What's your
theory, and
theory?
I have a suspicion
Yeah.
you will not disagree with me, is
Yeah.
that they probably did find a absolute bucket full of problems. And I'm sure
Yep.
some of them were valid, some of them weren't. And
Correct.
I have a suspicion once they started reporting things and realized that we coordinated vulnerability disclosure, that's, CVD, that's the term we use in this universe. They figured out that coordinating this stuff is not just a matter of like sending a bot loose on a GitHub repo, right? Like this is
Yeah.
a very human focused task where you have to, there's
Yes.
always back and forth. And
Yep.
I have received an enormous number of AI written vulnerability reports, and they are like rage inducing because it's like, this
At
should
4
have been
pages
4
long.
lines of text. Instead, I have
Yeah.
23 pages I have to read to even figure out what the heck is going on. My
Yep.
guess is they learned it's hard, and they're going to just pretend they never did it and hope no one notices,
Well,
but that doesn't mean they probably are sitting on thousands of vulnerabilities somewhere in some internal Git repo.
yes.
Like,
Yeah.
that's the thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, that's the other piece. I'm like, it's like, well, now you're just sitting on all this stuff. And by the
Yep.
time you get to it, it's already reported by other people, because these AI models are people independently with AI models are finding the same exact things. And that's what the data showed me, was like, as I went through it and saw the things that they were reporting, other people had already reported them.
Yeah.
And maybe some new discoveries, and maybe they're like, those same people are using Claude to find it. I'm not disputing that, but yeah, I just think genuinely kind of interesting. Then I think beyond that, you start to see, and we're going a little bit outside the report, but I think like that's what's fun, is like the navigation of all these like different holes. You see industry projects of people coming together suddenly to do vulnerability clearinghouses and do coordinated phone disclosure. And I think it's going to be fascinating. You have the White House with Golden Eagle. You have a Credus, which is OpenAI, Claude, and all these AI projects. And then you still have like thousands of independent researchers as well. And it's going to be interesting to see if there's what comes out of these projects. Because it's really easy to get together in a group of people, and you know this, you've been in open source a long time, be like, hey, let's all get together and do this thing. Everyone shows up to like shake hands and be like, yes, we agree, let's do this. Execution is completely different.
Yeah.
Like
and
execution,
this is a
and
super hard problem.
Yes. Yeah. So, like, I don't want to discourage it, but at the same time, it's like, yeah. And I'm happy to, like, I'm like, hey, happy to participate. Like, we actually run CVD for like hundreds on a monthly basis of vulnerability disclosures. Like, go look at our advisories. We shoot 5,000 CVEs so far in the last, like, I think we just hit 5,000.
Nice.
But like 4,900 of those were in the last like 12 months.
Yeah.
Like we've done volume to understand like what are the challenges, what are the problems, how you might approach this. Generally when I reach out to these projects, I get crickets. And so I'm like, yeah, like, I don't know that I'm seeing real interest in actually solving the problem. I think people are like, we're going to own this. We're going to do it with all the intention in the world. But I'm really curious to see what comes out of the other side on this. Cause like by the time all these vulnerabilities get to this place where like now we have resources to do coordination, which requires humans, you know, are they going to like fund hiring the humans to go do all that work? Like generally most of the people I see on these projects are like executives, or leaders,
people
so,
who go to meetings.
And I'm not trying to criticize. I'm just being like setting in reality. It's like, it's going to be really interesting to see how these different projects turn out.
Yeah.
And I like, number one thing, I love collecting vulns. I love vuln data. Like I like with Anthropic, I was like, I just want to see all the disclosures. Like,
right.
They even were like, hey, if we don't get acknowledgement and it doesn't get fixed after 90 days, we're going to disclose it. Nothing. Right. Um, and so generally this has turned out to be like pretty much what I expected. On day one of Glasswing, like
Yeah.
day one of Glasswing, like almost to a T. Like in my mind, I was like one vulnerability in the whole report. Like I know how this is going to play out. So it'll be interesting. I don't want to discourage people on these different projects and the clearinghouse and all that stuff. Like I wish them luck and I hope they're successful because I think like that would be great. I just,
Yeah.
yeah, man, I like, you've been at this long enough. Like I have a huge amount of skepticism of like whether any of these projects will be able to execute, in reality. So,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
I mean, it is an industry that makes you bitter is almost what I would say. Like, because unfortunately, I think we have seen so many instances where you're promised countless things and it never happens. And it's just, it's like constant frustration. I feel like the number of times I can count like a good thing happened in the world of vulnerabilities is over the last like 20 plus years I've been doing this is like 3, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of like awareness and a lot of interest now and actually
Yes.
like doing some stuff. So like that's interesting. But yeah, having participated in CVE program and in some of these other, programs, it's like they move very, very slow. And
Yes.
there's a lot of interest in making things better, but there's not, what I've seen is there's not a whole lot of action and following through with that. And there's not a lot of
Yeah.
accountability.
There's no accountability.
And so, we'll see. But it is kind of interesting when the government like has like CERT and they have, the CVE program, they have CISA, like they already have these functions. Like why
Yes.
are we spinning up yet another entity? But ultimately, like, yeah, more vuln data in different places. Like we'll go collect
Right.
it for everybody and put it in one place.
It's the XKCD cartoon, Patrick. That's
Yes. Yeah. So it's a fun one.
yeah. Yeah. All right. All right, man. Let's take this one home. So what is the takeaway I should get from this report other than we'll say it's all bullshit that I led with? Because I feel like this is a good report and there's some really cool data in this report.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest takeaways for me are like, using AI is definitely exposure that hasn't been there before. And so, if I'm an enterprise, it's like, you really have to take this seriously that people are leveraging and building with AI. They're you want to enable them, but like, this is a whole new attack surface. And so that's probably like the number one thing. I do think that like, I'd be a little bit careful that there is a large fear, uncertainty, and doubt narrative right now. And I'm a little bit concerned that we're seeing it drive federal regulation, right?
Yes.
And so I think it's great that like, I think this week, the open the open model aspect of all these companies being like, no, US government, please don't ban, open source models, metrics. I don't know all the AI. There's so many AI terms that are like,
yeah.
But open weight. That's what I was going to say. Open weight models. I think that to me, those are probably the biggest things is like, we shouldn't overreact. I do think that there is a large narrative being played to try and limit competition. As well. And naturally, fear can drive that. So I think, advocate for open source, advocate for open models. I do think be super mindful of open source. It's like, if you can submit a patch, and contribute to the project rather than only reporting vulnerabilities, that can help maintainers. And be really understanding that like not every open source maintainer, it's a priority to maintain their project. I think that's a reality of open source. And then I think if you're the other side I would say is like if you're building products, like everyone has their own products, every company, right? Whether it's a website or whether it's building software internally or externally or for customers. But yeah, the AI vuln discovery is real. So like, get educated, get a harness, run different models against your code to see what you can find. Because the other side of the fence is like on the coordinated vuln disclosure is, yeah, if you don't fix your stuff, like people are going to come at you over and over and over again.
Yep.
And so there is a aspect of capacity here where like you're going to be better off if you actually go and look and take care of your own vulnerabilities, opposed to letting third parties. And the other thing within the data that I think was pretty validating as well is AI discovered vulnerabilities were both in commercial and open source projects. So,
Yeah.
I think open source projects are like an early indicator because they're an easy target.
Yes.
But these these AI models are discovering vulnerabilities in commercial products where maybe the code isn't available. So just because your code is not open source doesn't mean that someone's not going to find the vulnerabilities in it with these AI models. So yeah, hopefully I don't know, is that a good summary of things for people to take into consideration?
Yes, I think it's great. And I really like when you led with like, don't be afraid, because you're right. There's an enormous amount of FUD right now around vulnerabilities. And I think your data shows it is truly FUD because it's like, it feels soul crushing and like world ending, but it's really not when you look at your numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I do think like it's, threat intelligence is helpful as there's more vulns because, ultimately it's going to point you in the right direction of like the
Yeah.
worst things to fix. And then, yeah, anything with external exposure or users interacting with, like, patch that stuff quick, fast, because naturally, like network edge devices, content management systems, internet exposed devices are right from a threat actor perspective for targeting.
Yep.
And when you look at it, it's like, yeah, a lot of these organizations are spinning out a ton more vulnerabilities. So like, yeah, if you patch your Windows systems and you patch your firewalls and your network edge devices and the stuff in a timely manner, ultimately that's, really the best thing that you can do. And, and then mitigating controls.
Indeed. Awesome. Well, Patrick, thank you, my friend. It has been a treat as always to chat. I love it.
Fun. Thanks so much.